I suspect that in the next month or two, we'll break up above the 74,000 range, and then we will begin the next part of the bull market. This is the trade of Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. Now, Bitcoin is usually extremely correlated with the NASDAQ. What you'll know about the NASDAQ is that the NASDAQ is currently at all-time highs. Gold is currently at all-time highs, well, just under all-time highs. The NASDAQ is currently at all-time highs. And if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is under its all-time high. But those things are temporary, and they're going to pass very soon. And when they do, you'll probably get the biggest catch-up trade that we've ever seen. What we've heard is that Trump may get Bitcoin and make it part of the strategic reserves that the United States has. What I've also heard is, we do know that the United States has a large holding of Bitcoin, and they got this through various confiscations. It's a big number. And so what we believe is that Trump may just announce that he's going to be holding it as part of the strategic reserve.
Rand Neuner starts by highlighting three main factors that could significantly propel Bitcoin forward. The first factor is the potential for a pro-crypto administration, specifically mentioning the possibility of a Trump administration. Rand criticizes the current administration for its unfavorable stance towards cryptocurrency, highlighting figures like Gary Gensler and Elizabeth Warren as part of the anti-crypto army. He believes that a change in administration, especially with Trump's promises to bring Bitcoin back to the US and prevent China from dominating the market, could be very positive for Bitcoin. The second factor Rand discusses is the impending rate cut cycle. He references a tweet by Vance Spence, emphasizing that we are about to witness one of the largest rate cut cycles in history. The third factor is what Rand calls the catch-up trade. He explains that Bitcoin is usually highly correlated with the NASDAQ, which is currently at all-time highs, along with gold. Rand then provides a detailed analysis of Bitcoin's historical cycles, particularly focusing on the halving events. He explains that after each halving, Bitcoin experiences a period of sideways movement, known as the halving chop, followed by an aggressive bull run. Currently, Bitcoin has been in this sideways chop for about 142 days, and Rand predicts that in the next month or two, Bitcoin will break above the $74,000 range and enter a new bull market phase. Please take a little time to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. You can also check out our other videos on cryptocurrencies and the overall digital asset space and drop your comments and observations in the comments section below. Everything you do helps with the YouTube algorithm and immensely contributes to the channel's growth. Thanks and enjoy the video.
Three things that can really power Bitcoin going forward. First one, Trump administration. If we get a pro-crypto favorable administration, I think that we've had a very, very bad administration for crypto in the last 4 years. Gary Gensler, the Democrats, Elizabeth Warren, the anti-crypto army. I think that a change in administration, and specifically if we get Trump with all his promises, bringing Bitcoin back to the US, etc., so China doesn't get it, I think that is very, very, very good for Bitcoin. The second thing that's very good for Bitcoin is, I'm going to show you a tweet because I just love the way that this guy words it. His name is Vance Spence, and he said, if you lived another 100 years, you might not see a larger rate cut cycle, the likes of which we are about to see. We're working with 525 basis points of pure Americana. And I think that a lot of people have forgotten that we're going into a rate cut cycle now. Now, Trump has warned Jerome Powell, and he said to Jerome Powell, he warned Jerome Powell Trump says he'll allow Jerome Powell to complete his term at the central bank if he won the November election, but warns him not to cut rates until after the elections. Okay, now I'm not sure Jerome Powell's going to listen, but it is a reminder for us that we're going into rate cut periods and we're going into increased liquidity periods. And when we get into rate cut periods and increased liquidity periods, things like gold and things like risk assets and Bitcoin do exceptionally well. The third reason is what I call the catch-up trade. Now, what is the catch-up trade? This is the trade of Bitcoin versus the NASDAQ. Now, Bitcoin is usually extremely correlated with the NASDAQ. What you'll know about the NASDAQ is that the NASDAQ is currently at all-time highs. Gold is currently at all-time highs, well, just under all-time highs. The NASDAQ is currently at all-time highs. And if you look at Bitcoin, Bitcoin is under its all-time high. Now, what we know from all previous cycles is that Bitcoin is actually the one to overperform on the ups and to obviously underperform on the downs. And in this cycle, specifically because of unnatural forces on the market, and when I say unnatural forces, a forced seller in the German government, a forced seller in the Mt. Gox coins, biggest seller of Bitcoin of all time, or biggest forced seller of Bitcoin of all time, have been in the markets and have suppressed or have increased the supply and therefore suppressed the price of Bitcoin. But those things are temporary and they're going to pass very soon. And when they do, you'll probably get the biggest catch-up trade that we've ever seen, because Bitcoin has to catch up to gold and has to catch up to the NASDAQ, which have been breaking all-time highs for long periods of time. And so I think when you combine increased liquidity with a Trump regime or a pro-crypto regime, if we get one, and then you say Bitcoin has also been lagging because of artificial supply dynamics. I think when you combine all of those things and you say to yourself, okay, where does this asset go next? I think we could be in for a very, very, very good end of year, which is, again, not dissimilar to what happens in every other Bitcoin cycle. In every other Bitcoin cycle, we have the sideways chop, and then we have a very, very, very aggressive bull run. And you can kind of see that the bull run starts here on the 26th of October, which is, that's 2 months from now or whatever it is. It's from a timing point of view, it's almost uncanny when this happens. And I'll even take you through to the previous halving, which you can kind of see over here. And you can kind of see where the bull markets actually started. Again, very, very, very similar time and very, very, very similar shape. So, it all seems to be playing out by the book. The technicals are showing you one thing. The fundamentals seem to be backing that one thing. We don't know what we don't know. But with all of these assumptions, I can't help but be bullish on Bitcoin and crypto as an asset class. We've just had the halving. The halving is a period where the miner rewards or the inflation rate of Bitcoin halves. And it does this because it does this to increase the scarcity of Bitcoin. And every year after the halving, we have what they call a halving chop. So we chop sideways for a long period of time. In previous years, it's been something around 200 days, somewhere around there. In this halving, we have been kind of chopping sideways for about, just have a look here. Let's get an accurate measure. About 142 days. We've been chopping sideways. And when I say sideways, between 60,000, 59,000, and 74,000, which is the all-time high of Bitcoin. This is just a matter of time. It's an accumulation period. We are exactly following the halving pattern from every other halving. I suspect that in the next month or two, we'll break up above the 74,000 range, and then we will begin the next part of the bull market. Now, I just want to show you what the halving post the bull market looks like. I'm trying to compress my chart. In fact, just to make it easier, maybe let's just look at a weekly. So what you can see is that post the halving, when you break out of this sideways movement, you get into a very, very, very aggressive bull market. This is measured in weeks. So this is the bull market that's measured in weeks. And you can see that the gains in Bitcoin in the previous bull market from that breakout, in 23 weeks, we had a 41%, we had a 402% rise in the price of Bitcoin. So I suspect that the same thing is going to happen. I suspect that we're going to follow this upward trend. I suspect that in 30 to 60 days, we will break up above this 74,000 level, which means that technically on the chart point of view, we're going to go into what they call price discovery. Price discovery happens when an asset has never been at that high price. And so you can't really chart the upside anymore. And I think at this point, it takes us to a new all-time high. And I think if my thesis is correct, we have a very, very, very aggressive end of year and potentially 2025. And I can break down for you from a fundamental point of view why I think we're going to have the aggressive 2025. So I've broken it down for you in the chart and I've shown you the chart, but let's actually dig into the fundamentals that actually back the charts. So I think the first thing is, as you rightly mentioned, you've got a pro-crypto administration that may come into power. Now, I say the words may come into power.
Right.
Because I'm not expecting Bitcoin to go up in a straight line. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's going to be a straight line from here. I think right now, the market has factored a Trump win into the markets. But we also know that there's a lot of pressure on the Democrats or on Joe Biden to exit the presidential race from the Democrats.
Rand also discusses the fundamental factors supporting this bullish outlook. He mentions the potential for a pro-crypto administration, which could integrate Bitcoin into the U.S. strategic reserves, similar to gold. The U.S. already holds a significant amount of Bitcoin through various confiscations, estimated to be worth above $34 billion. If Trump announces that this Bitcoin will be part of the strategic reserve, it could remove the cloud of potential selling pressure from the market, further boosting Bitcoin's price. Rand then touches on the recent selling pressures that have affected Bitcoin's price. He explains that the German government, similar to the US, had a large holding of Bitcoin, which they were required to sell due to market fluctuations. This selling added significant supply to the market, temporarily suppressing Bitcoin's price. Additionally, the Mt. Gox liquidation, stemming from a 2014 exchange collapse, has also added selling pressure as the liquidator distributes the recovered Bitcoin to creditors.
What we've heard is that Trump may get Bitcoin and make it part of the strategic reserves that the United States has. Now, if I think about what strategic reserves are, typically strategic reserves are things that the US needs in order to function in dire situations. So like, for example, the US has a strategic reserve of oil that it could call on in the case of wars and stuff like that. For Bitcoin, there's no real reason to hold it except for value protection. So if anything, it would fall under the same class as gold, right? So it would be like almost like we would keep gold on the US balance sheet as some kind of diversification or hard asset. And I guess that would make the most logical sense. What I've also heard is we do know that the United States has a large holding of Bitcoin. And they've got this through various confiscations along the years. And this is like quite a hefty sum of Bitcoin. I think above $3 or $4 billion. Don't quote me on the actual number. It's a big number. And so what we believe is that Trump may just announce that he's going to be holding it as part of the strategic reserve, which means that the cloud of the potential selling pressure may actually dissipate. And that's quite a big thing, because if you look at why Bitcoin has been coming down in the last couple of weeks, before the Trump assassination attempt, it's because there were multiple forces in the market. The first force seller in the market was Germany. So the German government had a very similar situation to the United States government, where they also landed up with about $2 or $3 billion worth of Bitcoin. And they also have a rule that they need to sell the asset if there's 10% fluctuations, and there was a 10% fluctuation, so they needed to sell their Bitcoin. And they landed up selling $2 to $3 billion worth of Bitcoin on the open market. There's now, and that was one of the clouds around the market. Then there was another cloud. The cloud is around Mt. Gox coins, as they're called in the market. And the origination of these Mt. Gox coins is in 2014, when Bitcoin was still in its infancy. There was a prominent exchange in Japan. The exchange was called Mt. Gox. And the exchange went into liquidation. And as part of the liquidation, the liquidator inherited what is today probably $10 billion or so worth of Bitcoin. And it's taken them since 2014 to wind down the estate. And they're now starting to make repayments of those coins. And so you're getting a whole lot of selling pressure on the market.
Rand remains optimistic about Bitcoin's future. He argues that once these artificial supply pressures subside, the true demand for Bitcoin will drive its price higher. The combination of increased liquidity from rate cuts, a potentially favorable political environment, and Bitcoin's catch-up trade potential creates a compelling bullish case for Bitcoin. Rand concludes by reiterating his confidence in Bitcoin's long-term prospects. He believes that the current market dynamics are setting the stage for a significant bull run, similar to previous cycles. He advises viewers to stay informed and be prepared for the potential opportunities that lie ahead in the crypto market. Please like and subscribe my channel.